which I believe will give all of you an opportunity to learn more about Kosovo. Firstly, I'd like to wish you all a happy President's Day. Whenever we hear of the United States, be it the Day of the President or the 4th of July, we celebrate it here in Kosovo as well, so you're not the only ones, so we join you in these celebrations. As you all know, Kosovo marked its 5th anniversary yesterday. It was a very special day for us, as Kosovo still remains the youngest country in Europe. Despite a lot of challenges, it's been a very, very exciting and successful 5 years. I am going to mainly focus on a couple of events, although from what I've seen from your agenda, you were only informed of what brought to the war of Kosovo. However, I am also going to try to give some background of what happened before the Declaration of Independence. I hope you can see the slide. The path to independence has been extremely tough, with lots of hurdles and difficulties. Whenever you think of Kosovo, I hope that you understand that this can be only qualified as a people's struggle for freedom and nothing else. It's simply a people's struggle for freedom, and everything that has happened during a century of this struggle relates to the plight of the people of Kosovo to be free from an attempted genocide and to be free from discrimination and segregation that has happened against it for so many years and decades. Without going back to what has happened throughout history, it is important for you to understand, if you have not been very familiar with the events in Kosovo, of what were some of the main issues that led to the Declaration of Independence. The first being, of course, the negotiations for Kosovo's final status, which took a couple of years, firstly led by the UN Secretary General's Special Envoy, President Ahtisaari, and later on continued by what we call the Troika process, which involved the representatives of the United States, the representatives of Russia, as well as President Ahtisaari as the representative of the United Nations. Despite of very sincere engagement by the Republic of Kosovo and lots of effort to try to come to a mutual consent with respect to the future of Kosovo, that was not possible during the negotiation process with Serbia. And as President Ahtisaari himself said, we have left no stone unturned. I would actually say that no stone was left unturned twice, because we have tried not only once, but twice in 2 very important negotiation processes to find a mutual solution. While the negotiations were taking place, of course, the people of Kosovo were expecting that the leaders will achieve to convince not only Serbia, but also the international community to gain, to have a support for independence. We knew that it was not an easy road, and we knew that Serbia, even if they have tried to change on other aspects, the approach that they had towards Kosovo has absolutely not changed. Maybe just in some minor issues, but the statements that we've heard during Milosevic and the statements that we've heard during the past 14 years are unfortunately quite similar when it comes to Kosovo. But there was a parallel process that was extremely important, and once negotiations were over and the main focus of the Kosovo leadership was to lobby with different countries so that when we declare independence, we would have their support and consequently their recognitions. There was also a legal transition process that was going on. That, of course, started with drafting of the Constitution, because we knew that once we declare independence, we had very little time to draft it. So it was very important that we have at least a first or a second draft before the Declaration of Independence happens, so that after the Declaration of Independence, we work on the final issues. The second point that deals with the legal transition process is the Amendment of Anticoagulations. As you know, Kosovo was under an United Nations administration for many years, more precisely from 1999 to 2008, when Kosovo's declaration was declared, the independence was declared. So during these years, Kosovo did not have any legal regulation on most of the areas. So the United Nations mission in Kosovo had adopted regulations and rules covering, let's say, issues of contract, issues of criminal law, issues of criminal procedure, civil law, and so on and so forth. So our job was to make sure that all these regulations are amended and they become Kosovo laws, not United Nations laws anymore. The third aspect of this involved preparation for transfer of competences. Because until 2008, although some competences had been transferred from the United Nations mission in Kosovo to the Kosovo institutions, there were still lots that remained within the UN. That was primarily because there are some areas where only an independent state can have powers, and that is primarily true when we talk about foreign affairs and issues of defense. I hope you can hear me well because I fear that you're still having problems with the sound. Can I get a confirmation whether I can continue?
You sound great on our end, Vjosa.
May I continue?
Please continue.
Okay. I'm sorry once again that I'm speaking with my phone like this. I guess that's the only way. All right. When it comes to the Declaration of Independence, one of the most interesting experiences that I had, of course, was working on the text of the Declaration of Independence. While for most of you, you can see the text of the U.S. Declaration of Independence and you can read about the intent of the drafters yourselves by reading different materials. For us in Kosovo, it's been a process that we've been personally involved in, especially some of us that have worked closely with our friends, primarily the United States of America and some European countries, who have given advice on the text of the Declaration. From the Office of the President, I was the one working on the text. And of course, each and every sentence had to be drafted in a way that reflected the will of the people. But also in a way that reflected an international agreement that we had, and that was the Ahtisaari package, the Ahtisaari proposal, although that proposal, of course, had not been agreed upon by Serbia. As you may know, the Ahtisaari proposal, which was a United Nations-led process, proposed supervised independence that is supervised by the international community for Kosovo. It was quite a unique proposal. But the way how we have drafted it, it made it possible to be implemented practically. So we had to make sure that the Declaration of Independence, the text itself, also covered parts from the Ahtisaari proposal. And that is another reflection that the process of declaring independence of Kosovo is a coordinated process rather than a unilateral declaration as it is called by some. There have been lots of lobbying and coordination involved because, as I said, it was crucial that at the time when Kosovo declares independence, that we get as many recognitions as possible. There have been lots of events preceding and surrounding the 17th of February, as I said, the internationally supervised independence proposal by Ahtisaari. Then about 2 or 3 days before the actual session where we declared independence took place, the citizens of Kosovo, probably more than about 1 million, which counts more than 50% of Kosovo's population, were all celebrating in the streets and calling for independence. They were calling on their representatives to declare Kosovo independent. The celebrations of the citizens are mentioned here intentionally because they have been seen by the International Court of Justice as an element which shows that the day when Kosovo's declaration of independence was a unique and special circumstance under which this act has happened, and therefore qualifying the entire Declaration of Independence as an act of the people rather than an act of an institution. As you know, the Declaration of Independence declared Kosovo as an independent, sovereign, democratic, secular, and multi-ethnic republic guided by the principles of non-discrimination and equal protection under the law. This is one of the most important definitions in the Declaration of Independence, which is also outlined in the Constitution in much more detail. Recognitions have been a very specific and unique path for Kosovo. While for many countries they firstly become members of the UN, and then that membership alone means that most of the other countries recognize them. For Kosovo it's been different because we're still not a member of the UN because of the threat from Russia that it will use a veto if we apply. Therefore our recognitions path has been bilateral, meaning we had to approach bilaterally each and every member of the United Nations in order to get the recognition. Our first recognition was received from the United Kingdom immediately a day after we declared independence, and I specified they're received because there have been some declarations of independence which apparently were written even on the 17th of February, a day before, but we only received them afterwards. So we've decided to use the receipt rule rather than the dispatch rule, if I may call it so. It's been then France, the US, Turkey, Albania, Afghanistan, and Costa Rica day because we received news of recognition from Egypt on Kosovo's 5th anniversary, so it was an amazing present knowing what a great player Egypt is for the region. The recognition process is continuing. It has not been an easy process because Serbia has a very wide diplomatic network everywhere in the world, whereas you can imagine for a country like Kosovo that does not have diplomatic relations with all the other members, it's even hard for us to travel to get to those countries. But it's a process that is continuing, and we are very much confident that pretty soon we will at least have 2/3 of the UN, and hopefully that will at least be an incentive for the members of the UN Security Council to pressure Russia not to veto a possible application by Kosovo. Kosovo is today also a member of international organizations, including UN agencies like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. We have recently joined the EBRD, also known as the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and these have been very important achievements when it comes to foreign affairs. There have been some post-independence immediate challenges, the first one being is the institution building process. As I said, many institutions in Kosovo had to be built from scratch. For more than a decade under the Milosevic regime, Kosovo was of course not allowed to have its institutions, but we were also under an apartheid-like regime. Although we were the same race, we were not allowed to go to school, we were not allowed to have jobs, we were not allowed to use even cultural facilities. And I always mention an example when I speak to people abroad. Even we as kids, when we wanted to have a basketball match, we were not even allowed to have a basketball match. That's how far the regime was going. So, but even during late 90s and until 2008, as I said, the United Nations had transferred some competences to Kosovo institutions such as justice, internal affairs, etc., but not issues such as foreign affairs, intelligence, and army, because these are only features of an independent and sovereign state. So we only got to establish these institutions from scratch when Kosovo was declared independent. It's been very challenging, for example, to build the first diplomatic service of Kosovo, open the first embassies, appoint the first ambassadors. As I said, recognitions and membership in international organizations have been another aspect that included lots of challenges. Then economy is one area where we are still facing many hurdles, mainly because Kosovo has a very high rate of unemployment. while on the other hand it has the youngest population in Europe with an average age of 27. So you can imagine that each and every year we have quite a big number of people joining the work market, whereas there's not enough jobs for them. The two important aspects of development and economy have been the privatization process, where state-owned and publicly owned enterprises had to be transferred into a privatization process. It's a process that to some extent has not gone as well as we expected because it was done in a rush, I would say. And the second aspect is the transition to a market economy, which is a process that most transition countries, especially post-communist countries, had to go through. The fourth aspect is ethnic relations. The Ahtisaari proposal for Kosovo's independence included many aspects of affirmative action for minority communities. The most important of which I would say is the decentralization process, according to which Kosovo would form new municipalities in areas where the Serbian minority would have a majority or other minority communities, and would decentralize powers from the central to the local government so that those municipalities led by Serbs can have their own opportunity to lead and their communities' lives and to contribute to their lives. The fifth aspect were the legal development. As I mentioned, one of the immediate challenges was adopting the Constitution, which requires not only 2/3 in the parliament to be adopted, but it requires what we call a double majority, because it is voted not only by Albanians, but then a separate vote is also additionally done by the minority community so that we make sure we also have 2/3 from their votes. So it's a double majority that is required. It's a very difficult process to adopt or amend the Constitution. And the second is adoption of Ahtisaari legislation. Kosovo probably broke a record when it adopted about 50 laws in one day, all of which had to deal with giving privileges and what we call positive discrimination or affirmative action to the minority communities. I will speak in a while more about the relations between ethnicities in Kosovo, but as you may know, right after independence on the request of Serbia, the UN General Assembly had requested an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice, which is the judicial body of the UN. And the advisory opinion would be on the question of whether the unilateral declaration of independence by the provisional institutions of self-government of Kosovo was in accordance with international law. As you can see there, the question itself was trying to assume that the Declaration of Independence was a unilateral action, and secondly, that it was done by the provisional institutions of self-government, which were institutions formed by UNMIC. However, as you know, the ICJ decided that the Declaration of Independence did not violate international law, but there was an extremely important aspect to it when it comes to ICJ's evaluation of who the authors of the Declaration of Independence were. I was the coordinator of the Kosovo team, as it was mentioned earlier in these proceedings, and I have to say it's been the second most important and most historical development in the history of Kosovo. And my badge, when I went to the UN, was saying authors of the Declaration of Independence. I still keep it. It was quite interesting. But the International Court of Justice rightly decided that it was not the provisional institutions of self-government declaring independence. It was an act of the people of Kosovo. So it was the representatives of the will of the people of Kosovo that declared independence. It was just like the fathers of the United States when they joined in a place and they declared independence. It was just like what happened in France, in Germany, and in other countries. It was not an act of secession. It was an act of independence that resulted from the dissolution of Yugoslavia, which, as you may know, in international law have two different meanings. So having established that the authors of the Declaration of Independence were the representatives of the people of Kosovo acting on behalf of the people, the International Court of Justice decided that such a declaration is not prohibited by international law, therefore it did not violate international law. When it comes to Kosovo's international status today, again, not to repeat, it has been recognized by 99 members. It's a member of UN agencies and other international and regional organizations. One very important development has been in September 2012, more precisely on the 10th of September, where supervised independence was ended. The Ahtisaari proposal has foreseen that after a couple of years, the international community would review whether Kosovo has implemented all the obligations from Ahtisaari so that it can become fully sovereign and not supervised by international community anymore. And they decided that this implementation has occurred, therefore they ended the supervised independence. So today Kosovo is simply independent without the supervised part. About 2 years ago, the UN General Assembly has adopted a resolution that calls for Kosovo and Serbia to have a dialogue on practical issues that would help the lives of the citizens. Of course, we had welcomed such a resolution because, first and foremost, we believe that we have to relax the relations with Serbia. We have to normalize relations with Serbia. And despite of the fact that Serbia has never asked for forgiveness for the crimes that it has committed, we still have extended our hand of friendship because we believe that it's for the best of the peoples of both countries. Kosovo people have suffered a lot. It's about time that we live in peace. And Kosovo's independence has served as a factor for stability for the entire region, not just internally. And one fact that proves this is that we have been recognized by other regional countries, by all our immediate neighbors except for Serbia. One very important aspect of this dialogue is what is currently happening, which is the dialogue on a prime minister level and a presidential level. It is the very first time after independence that Kosovo and Serbia are sitting at such a high level, and we believe that this is extremely important, and we hope that this process will bring the normalization of the relations between the two countries. But most importantly, we hope that Serbia will be finally convinced that Kosovo's independence is irreversible and that it has to accept this reality, because that would be the best also for the people of Serbia, so that they can continue their European integration path rather than deal with logics of the past. Currently, one of the main requests of Kosovo in this dialogue is that Serbia removes its illegal security structures, which are still causing lots of problems in north of Kosovo. One of our biggest challenges right now. We haven't seen any progress right now because there have been contradicting statements by Serbia. One day the president says we will remove the structures, the next day the prime minister says we will not remove them. So it's hard to understand what they think and what they will do. But it's going to be our continuous persistence that this happens because it's a clear violation of Kosovo's territorial integrity to have such structures in the north, which have also led to flourishing of crime, especially economic crime in the north. Kosovo has developed a very special friendship with the United States, and it's been historic. It goes way back to George Bush I, and we thought only the leadership of each and every citizen of Kosovo will be eternally grateful for the support the U.S. has given so that Kosovo's people's struggle for freedom becomes a reality. We have a strategic partnership with the United States, especially with the Guard of Iowa, which is, of course, a small place in the United States, but it's similar to Kosovo with a number of people, and it's an excellent cooperation between the Kosovo Security Force and the Iowa Guard. When it comes to the Euro-Atlantic perspective, our main goals as a country and the goals of the people of Kosovo remain membership in the European Union and NATO, Of course, we have lots of love and friendship for the United States, but we are located in the heart of Europe. So of course, our aim is to join the European Union. There have been a couple of important processes in this aspect. The first one being the stabilization and association process. The second is the visa liberalization process. The third, of course, is the role of the Kosovo security force towards joining NATO. We believe that in all these aspects, Kosovo should do more. Of course, especially me being a member of the opposition, I criticize the government every day on what more they should do. But it's important that we do not stop, that we move forward. When it comes to Kosovo's economy today, foreign investment is still not at a desirable level. There's quite a portion of Kosovo's budget coming from remittances or money from the diaspora, because about 1/3 of Kosovo's population in number lives abroad, because during late 80s, early 90s, they were kicked out of their country, and most of them send money back so that they can help their family survive. Membership in the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the EBRD have helped Kosovo's economic development through loans for some very important projects. There's still a lot to be done. There are lots of rule of law related, I would say, concerns that are also keeping the foreign investment away. So there is a lot to be done, because as long as we have about 40% of unemployment in Kosovo, we are considered one of the poorest countries. But Kosovo should definitely keep working in having not only a sound legal framework, but also legal framework that works in practice, that would allow the foreign investors to come and invest in a country that definitely is extremely rich in minerals and in other areas, but most importantly, it's extremely rich with its people, because as I said, it has a population with an average age of as young as 28, where more than 60–70% of the people are at that age. Finally, as I said, one of the biggest challenges is the north of Kosovo, which has become a crime oasis. There have been efforts from Kosovo, specifically by opening an administrative office, which is offering help to the citizens, Kosovo Serb citizens in the north. There is a mountain of offers stemming from the Ahtisaari proposal when it comes to the rights of minority communities, and as the international community has accepted, there's no country in the world that has given more to its minorities than Kosovo has. It simply needs the people living in the north to know what their rights are, because they have been living as hostages to a handful of criminals. And unfortunately, even they are not living free. So we're hoping that these offers that are stemming from Ahtisaari will reach the people living in the north, although only about 1/3 of Serbs in Kosovo live in the north, because more than 2/3 live in the south, and they have been fully integrated by, as I said, creating their own municipalities, by participating in the parliament. They have more than 20 seats guaranteed and reserved in the parliament out of 120, because although their percentage in the population entirely for the minorities is only about 8, so they have 20 guaranteed seats, and then if they participate in the voting, they get extra from those 20. Currently, they have 25 out of 125. They have guaranteed seats in the central and local governments. We have a deputy prime minister. In the Kosovo government, we have many ministers leading key positions in the government, and the same is at the local level. A number of institutions are dealing exclusively with minority rights, such as the Consultative Council for Communities within the President's office, the Office for Minority Communities within the Prime Minister's office, and then minority offices in each and every ministry and in each and every municipality. There are a number of laws which we call laws of vital interest, because they deal with not only interests of the people in general, but also interests of the minority communities, and such include laws on religion, laws on education. None of them can be changed without requiring a double majority, because we want to make sure that all of the minority communities have a say, have an important say in all the laws that are adopted in Kosovo. There have been a number of newly created municipalities, and the voters turnout in those municipalities with the Serb majority was extremely high. It was even higher than in the municipalities that are led by Albanians. So currently, 5 municipalities are run by Serb mayors. Hopefully we will have more. We hope that the north of Kosovo will join this group of good examples. The final information, talking about the way forward, Kosovo is focused on fulfillment of technical criteria for visa liberalization. It remains one of the very few countries in Europe that still cannot travel in Europe and abroad without a visa, so it's a very important process that touches the lives of each and every citizen, especially for students. So it's a process that we need to work on. Secondly, the fulfillment of political, economic, and rule of law criteria so that we move on in the European integration process. It's a very long road, but we are ready and exciting to move ahead in that road. Thirdly, is the integration of Kosovo's north. We hope that the dialogue between the prime ministers will result in Serbia's decision to remove its illegal structures from the north so that we can move ahead with our citizens living there so that they can be free and also exercise the rights as provided in the Constitution. It's the further strengthening of the Kosovo Security Force and its transformation of the Kosovo Army, which hopefully will happen very soon. Efforts for membership in NATO, Council of Europe, and other international organizations, increasing the number of recognitions, further strengthening of the relations with the United States, of course, is extremely important on all areas, cultural, diplomatic, political, economic, sports, and so on and so forth. We hope that there will be a conclusion of the Kosovo-Serbia dialogue with at least some success. And we hope to find a way forward for membership in the UN, and we hope that Serbia will be finally convinced that it should not block Kosovo's membership, of course through Russia in this case, because as I said, it will only be the best for the people of both countries to move ahead in the European Union, where actually at that point borders will have no meaning. And last but not least, definitely, is the economic development, where there's still a lot that needs to be done. The government of Kosovo needs to be very careful of the steps that it undertakes, and needs to make sure that relations with other countries and international organizations are such that we can definitely benefit from them also economically. I mean, benefit from the relations with those countries. To spread the word about this young country, young in spirit, young in population, but very, very exciting to cooperate with all the friendly nations around the world, to say the least. So that's more or less it from my side. I look forward to answering your questions, and I hope you could hear me with all these complicated technology.
Ms. Osmani, I want to thank you. My name is Bart Redford. I'm working with the Center for Russian, East European, and Eurasian Studies here at KU. I want to thank you for bearing with us as we work out the sound issues. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yes, I can actually hear you on Skype. I don't think I can hear you on the other technology, the Adobe Connect.
Terrific. Well, I think we'll be happy with what we have. I want to also thank you for your comments. You've done a terrific job of sort of filling in the missing pieces for our talks on Kosovo, illustrating some of the challenges before independence and after. And I want to tell you that we'll have, I'm standing in a classroom at University of Kansas. We also have our colleagues at Kansas State University. I'll look for comments or any questions that people might have that they want to type in online. But for students and faculty here, I'll just invite them up to ask you. And I think we had one. Yeah, I think we had a question to start with here at KU.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Alisa and I'm actually from Ukraine. So maybe like the question that I will be asking, it has to do more with the general geopolitical situation in Eastern Europe. But I was just curious, you were talking about the problems of institution building and you were also talking about such things as privatization challenges. So I just wanted to ask you, what are some of these institution building problems that you're facing with, or what are some of the problems with privatization of governmental enterprises, and to what extent some of these problems might be attributed to Serbian economic interest in Kosovo, and to what extent they are attributed to the weakness of institutions inside of the country.
Okay. Hold on. Thank you. That's definitely a very interesting question. When I mentioned institutional building processes, I said that many institutions had to be built from scratch. So one of the immediate problems was that we didn't have people with lots of experience that could deal with, as I mentioned as an example, foreign affairs. Even during Yugoslav times, Kosovo did not have ambassadors because even at that time, Kosovo's diplomats were discriminated. So I think we had only one or two ambassadors in the entire foreign service of Yugoslavia. So, and they are now pretty old. So you can imagine that we only had a group of people that, of course, had studied in the area of diplomacy, but it was hard to have people with experience in this area. The problems were in that sense, as well as in, of course, drafting the proper legislation and regulations that will make it a functional service. It was the same with the intelligence service. Kosovo never had an intelligence agency. It's the first time that we have that. And there are still problems because of lack of experience, because, of course, sometimes there are tendencies to abuse the function and tendencies from some government officials to have people that are related to them working in these agencies, which should be independent and not related to any political party. So privatization has been extremely complicated because it started before Kosovo became independent. It was run by what was called the Kosovo Privatization Agency, and it went to decrease employment. Because there were lots of people that were employed in these factories that used to, of course, belong to the public, to the people under socialism. They were either publicly owned enterprises or socially owned enterprises. So by the time these were privatized, many people remained without jobs. According to the legal infrastructure, the firms, the companies that bought the enterprises had to give a certain percentage to the workers. However, there are so many court cases because the companies, the privatization companies, are not fulfilling that requirement. So we've had so many protests and demonstrations outside of the institutions by the workers, by the employees that used to work in these factories. A second problem with privatization has been the fact that there were some corruption allegations. There's still no court case that has been concluded in this, but I believe that there are very serious allegations, and this has been one issue that has made quite a big stigma on the entire process. There are a couple of other huge enterprises that have not been privatized yet because of even legal problems. For example, Trepča, which is in the north of Kosovo, part of it is in the north, where we're still having problems. Part of it is in the south. So there are also legal implications. And during Milosevic time, Milosevic had sold parts of Trepča apparently to some companies abroad. So we have lots of legal issues to solve before the privatization goes on. But I would say that overall, there's not the process as such has not gone that bad, but most of the problems have been because of internal politics in Kosovo, not necessarily because of the relations with Serbia, except for the example of Trepča that I mentioned, which we're still dealing with, at least from a legal point of view, because during Milosevic time, some of its parts were sold to some companies. So the institutional building process in general has, it can always be challenging when you start something from scratch. And when there's not that much experience, although we've had almost the entire world in Kosovo through the United Nations, not always were they here to share the good experience, because we've had people from all around the world and not all of them were very, very successful democracies, to say the least. I hope this answers your question.
Yes, I think so. Thank you very much. If I could switch gears just a little bit. You mentioned the fact that there are a third of Kosovo's population that currently live abroad. That's a huge diaspora, and I'm just curious whether or not you have an idea of what exactly. Well, first of all, have you had many people who have returned already since 2008? And secondly, for those who remain outside the borders, what's going to be the tipping point? What is it? Is it a legal barrier? Is it an economic issue? What's going to make those people return?
There are about 500,000 more, actually more than 500,000 people from Kosovo living in the diaspora, mostly in Switzerland, Germany, Sweden, so around Europe. Now, just to clarify, most of these people are not people that have left during the war, which was the ethnic cleansing process, because during the ethnic cleansing, during the war in Kosovo in 1999, more than 1 million people, which is more than 50%, had left, but it was mostly in the countries in the region, such as Macedonia, Montenegro, and Albania. Now, right after the war, probably the first day when NATO entered Kosovo, the vast majority of Kosovars immediately, those who had left during the war, they immediately returned. That also included quite a large number of people that had left during late 80s and early 90s. But there are still lots of people, as I said, about 500,000, which is almost 1/3 of Kosovo's population, living in these countries in Europe, because these are not people, at least not most of them, that had left during the war. These are people that had left at least about a decade before the war, and now most of their children, in the best case, most of their children are now the second generation. There are so many families are there with their third and fourth generation that have been born and live in these countries, and they are being educated there, they work there. So given that Kosovo has a very high level of unemployment and the economy is not at its best right now, we don't have a very high incentive to bring them here. So to answer the second part of your question, I definitely think that the best would be to have incentives with them through economy, through diaspora investment, because our diaspora has been quite successful in some countries in Europe, but also the United States with their businesses. So they should be given incentives to invest in their own country, because probably that's also the best way for them to contribute, but also for Kosovo to return something to them. We have recently formed a ministry for diaspora, so there are lots of efforts to coordinate the diaspora. Firstly, to offer them help so that they can still get education in their own language, although living abroad. But when it comes to economy, as I said, that's the biggest incentive that would be needed to have them all return, and that's not still at a very high level. Without having development within Kosovo, it's hard to convince others to return. There have been a process of returns from some European countries, forced returns actually, as part of the visa liberalization process, because we need to cooperate with most European countries so that those people that are staying in those countries illegally are returned, and then Kosovo has given quite a big portion of its budget so that those people who are forcibly returned have a house, have education for their kids, and are given some initial help so that they survive once they return. But there's still lots to be done.
All right, thank you. Perhaps I can just ask one final question.
Sure.
When we had Oliver Ivanovich in last week, he outlined a number of different elements that he would like to see take place in Kosovo. But one of the elements that really surprised me was he mentioned the need for some sort of cultural exchange, explaining that even though people have lived side by side, with all the hostilities and everything else going on, the opposing forces or the opposing sides really know very little of each other. I mean, can I ask you what your opinion of that idea is, and what do you think the prospects are for that happening?
Well, I'm really glad to hear that something like that comes from Oliver Ivanovic, given that he leads what is called the Ministry for Kosovo, an institution that Serbia definitely doesn't need, because Kosovo has its own ministries that deal with the interests of its citizens. I believe that such an initiative would certainly help people to understand each other. Let me just give an example. For so many years during the 80s and early 90s, there was such a heavy and dirty propaganda against Kosovo Albanians in the Serbian national television that we were called people with tails. So kids were educated there that we do not look normal with. We have some features of abnormal people. So they need to know, they need to have contact with one another so that we see that we are all the same, just ordinary people that have been victims of a horrible regime led by Milosevic. So I believe that cultural exchange is absolutely something that needs to happen. As I said, Kosovo has extended its hand of friendship, and it continues to do so for the people of Serbia. After all, we have never been in war with the people of Serbia. We have been in war with the regime. We have been in war against genocide and against Milosevic, but not against the Serbian people. And we cannot choose our neighbors. We live next to each other, and there's no other way but for us to better the relationships with one another. And it can definitely start and be successful if we leave it in the hands of the young people. I believe they are the generation that will make the necessary changes for the region so that we finally are not known in history books and in international law books as a troublesome region, but as a region that is living at peace with one another. There's a lot where we can cooperate, definitely, music, culture, sports. But just to mention a fact, Kosovo has a judo champion, world champion, who is not allowed to participate in the Olympics or in other international games just because Serbia is blocking her from participating, and she's the world champion. We have had a very famous singer who wanted to represent Kosovo in Eurovision. She was not allowed to represent Kosovo, and she had to go with another country. So it's these kind of things that Serbia should stop doing if it really is sincere when it comes to sincere relations between the two peoples. I definitely think that there's a way of doing it. There has been a sincere invitation from our side. We hope that the Serbian side will also take it seriously so that ordinary people can simply live ordinary lives and cooperate, be it in business, culture, education, and so on and so forth.
Very good, thank you. I think, folks, we're going to leave it there for today. I want to thank our speaker today, Ms. Vjosa Osmani, Kosovo Member of Parliament. We very much appreciate your comments.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
And I also want to remind folks that are tuning in that we'll be doing this again. We have one more session, which will be February 25th, same time. We'll be speaking on the international role in Kosovo, and we'll have a speaker from D4D in Kosovo, a senior researcher and analyst named Drilan Gashi, who will be speaking on the international role in Kosovo. Thank you very much.